and good night, depending on the time of the day you're watching this. I forgot to close my blinders. It looks like, I'm going to have a visit from God. It's not, it's just I have really bad light. And I forgot. And it's not a good idea, to blind my guests either. So it's better to do it this way. So, hello, everybody. How are you? As you know, we do time travel in this show. We are at 5 p.m. the afternoon in Spain. What time is for you, Matt?
It's 10 a.m. So I woke up maybe like 2 hours ago.
Nice. I woke up like I don't know how many.
Yeah, that's all right.
9:30 my time, like a long time ago. In a
I'm
galaxy
still on
far,
my
far
morning
away.
coffee. So
This is my. I am not going to say what it is, but it's my something that I take
yeah,
after
that's okay.
the lunch.
Yeah.
I take from this bottle and pour in that bottle, so you can imagine it's not coffee. Anyway, as we were saying, how's things for you, my friend? First of all, the great Matt Kindt with you all, ladies and gentlemen. As we know, we're time traveling, and the second part of it is how things in your part of the world. Are things getting better, worse, crazy as usual? How is it?
Yeah, it's good, I guess. I'm lucky that I can just stay home and work, or and I go into the studio and work, so I don't really know what's going on. I look out the window, it looks the same to me, but we've been quarantining for like a year, but we're hopefully light at the end of the tunnel here with vaccine and everything. So we'll see.
Yeah, same thing here. The vaccination pace keeps getting better and better, faster and faster here in Spain. I think we're the
Yeah.
second country in Europe in terms of speed after the UK, which is, in another galaxy because they hoarded all the vaccines. They kept them for themselves and didn't give them out. So let's not talk
Yeah.
about that. But the pace is really, really good. Okay, imagine my name is Victor Frankenstein from now on. I'm your doctor. I don't know if you can trust me or not, but that's who I am. This road to implant just became, Jim Carrey. Boom, boom. I just gave you 2 shots. I just gave 2 shots to everybody in the world. I just ended the pandemic. And now I'm asking
Sounds
you,
good.
what's the first thing that you've been dying to do since March of last year? The first thing that the moment you are released into the wild, that is like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
I want to, like, of all the things, I want to just, I want to get together with friends and play some board games. I'm like a huge board game fan, so I want to do that, which is like still kind of a staying at home activity. And then, but also I miss museums. I want to travel. I haven't traveled anywhere, and it's probably the longest I've gone without flying somewhere or going to see whatever art in some museum. So I miss that the most.
Oh, you did a lot of that. I remember when you were last in Madrid with the family.
Yeah, no, we had so much fun in Madrid, and that was like one of our last trips. I'm trying to think of our last overseas trip, and then I was supposed to go to France in April last year, and I was so excited, and then that didn't happen. So yeah, that'll be the next thing. I get on a plane, we go somewhere.
What do you miss the most? That kind of traveling, that being able to go to museums and see things, or the convention side of it?
Definitely the museums. The conventions is like uh, the convention is like it's like the office. It's like going to the office to work. I enjoy it. It's fun, but it's also that's the business part of it. But I like visiting. Like the lucky thing about being in comics, and the thing I never realized was um, how it opened up the world. Like I got to travel so much more than if I had just been like a graphic designer or done my original day job. I got to see so much more. So I feel lucky to have like stumbled into this crazy career where I have fun all day and then I get to go travel around the world.
In terms of the conventions, if I asked you, there's two parts. Always when I ask, there's two parts of it that people miss. Some people tell me, the fans, and some people tells me, yeah, the fans is fine, but it's the work part. But there's the other part where you meet. It's the only time in the year, maybe where you can meet with your peers, have a beer, have a coffee, just talk shop. Is that the part you miss the most?
Yeah. No, that really is the thing is like there's some conventions where that's the only time that year I'll see some of my friends, and I know like there's a show we go to here in called Heroes in North Carolina, and that's almost all of my friends end up going to that show, and we hang out like a few days before and then a few days after, and so that's one of the shows I miss the most. But yeah, and then like Jeff Lemire's in Canada, so it's like I either have to go up there and see him, or we end up meeting at a convention. So it's been a kind of a lonely year.
And why would you go to Canada anyway? No, I'm kidding. And why comics? Of all the chances you have to do anything, why did you decide to do comics?
That's it's funny is like I have a lot of interests. So like when I was younger, like I loved writing, and I really loved drawing, and I love movies, and I think when I was getting ready, or when I was out of high school going to college, I was like, I really want to do something in film, make movies. Like I like the writing part of it. I like photography and directing, and then I realized that two things. One is I won't be able to do it all. Like when you're in filmmaking, you aren't able to do everything. And I like editing. I like cinematography. I want to write the thing. And the chances of me being able to do all of that, they were so small. So that was the first obstacle where I was like, I just don't think I'll be happy doing that. And the second one was having to work with so many people and collaborating and raising the money. I was like, I don't want to do that either. So in a way, comics was like the ideal medium where I don't have to work with anybody. I don't have to listen to anyone, and I can do everything myself. I'll write it, I'll draw it, I'll letter it, I'll design it. And now to me, the publisher is almost, at this point, the publisher is almost incidental. They help me and they facilitate it, and it's great. And with the marketing and the promotion and everything. But even that stuff I like doing. I like trying to figure out how to market a book and promoting it. There's a creativity to that I also enjoy. So comics was the one medium where like I was able to just do it all and have total control.
And that's also why you do the Kickstarters. It also challenges you to keep thinking in that other part of the business.
Yeah, and I do. I enjoy that. Like my daughter's about to go to college, and she's into art, and she can do everything. She can do everything better than me, which is amazing. I'm so happy. I was like, good, you should be better. But the one thing I was like, take some business classes, learn like how to be an entrepreneur. Like I went to school and I took all the writing and drawing and design. So I got the creative part down, but I didn't take any of the business stuff. So like that was something I had to learn on the fly. And I was like, I think that's good advice for anybody that's a creative person. You tend to be good at that. That's all right brain stuff. But it's the left brain, the business part of it that is much harder. You need to learn that too if you're going to make it.
Did you ever think about becoming an editor?
I've thought about it, not when I was younger, but like as I get older, I'm like, oh, I see a lot of young creators who I really love, and I love the art, and then I've not really just an editor, but like a publisher. Like I love the idea of just being like promoting people who I'm a fan of, and then putting all that together and just putting like a line of books together. That's interesting to me. But at the end of the day, I only have so many hours in the day to work.
Yeah, of course.
And so I don't have the time to do it. I still like making them. So
that's the thing. I was talking to another Spanish creator on last Thursday, I think it was, and I was asking her about her future in the industry, what she thought she could do. It's like, believe it or not, if I ever get tired of creating comics, I could become a publisher, not an editor, a publisher. So I am able to promote, because I guess that's the same thing with you. She gets so many samples of people, see so many stuff. So it's like I feel so bad because I don't have time to help them. But like if I ever change roles, that could be my role, become a publisher, so I can push and help that people.
Yeah, I see that all the time, all these books, and I was like, oh, they're not getting enough attention, and I just, you kind of want to promote those, and I do what I can just with my voice, but I would love to put a line of books together and then maybe design them and then edit too. I would do the editing.
You could do it all in the end. Except for is there, when you start creating a story, when you start thinking about it, I'm thinking about Scott McCloud, because the time I had him here, he was, pointing at the corners of my screen and signaling, the kind of creators that exist and all that. And I always prefer to live in the middle, not oh, the structuralists, the emotionals, the blah, blah, blah. But when you get into a project, what's your focus? Do you focus on emotion first, or do you need to think about the structure of what you're creating first?
Yeah, it's all over the place. I think the emotion part is the last part. Like when every story, it starts with like to me it's like the idea first. Like what's the big idea? What's the what like the big broad stroke? Like I don't know, any book. Like Mind Management to me, like I just want to do something that had characters with kind of mind powers, whatever it is, just like a little bit of spy stuff thrown in. I'm like, oh, these elements that I like. And then I honestly, I take an idea like that. I'm trying to think of another concept. Like there's a new one. There's a new story I'm working on where it's like, this is a perfect example. I haven't even written it yet, but like the idea is like these telescopes way out in space and then pointed back at Earth, and they're looking at time. They're basically looking at the past. Like they've faster than light, they go out, they turn around, they look at the light that's coming in so they can see the past. So that's an idea I've kind of had for a while. I think my dad actually gave me that idea. Like he's like, why don't they do this? They should do this. I was like, Dad, that'll never work. And then but it's an idea I've had for years and years. And then I started writing on it this year. I was like, oh, I think maybe I could do something. But it starts with that idea, just some crazy like concept, right? And then from there, I'm like, well, then what's the story? And then you start to hone in, like, well, there's a guy out there on the satellite living out there, and then he's looking at the past, and then the concept sort of suggests a story or a more human element to it. It's like, well, what would it be like out there, and what would you look at if you could go back and look at history but not impact it? Like what things would you look at, and then why would you do that? So then the character and the emotion, all that comes from the actual setup, whatever the basic idea is. And then so it starts big, and then you just kind of burrow down till you get to the human, and then usually it's something sad or tragic or horrible.
How do you decide if you're going to write it only, you know what I mean, or also you're going to draw it? What is that makes you decided?
The older I've gotten, the more work I've been doing, the more it's I've been lucky enough to have enough artists that I work with that we do a book, and then we talk about, well, what's the next thing? And so then a lot of times I'm just coming up with an idea for a particular artist. Like I've been working with Tyler Jenkins, and we've just been chaining off books because we started with Grass Kings, and then I had Black Badge, which I actually was going to draw, but we wanted to do another book together, and I was like, well, if you want to do this one, I have this, it's ready to go. And so he kind of I was going to do that one and then didn't, and then we just kept going, and then Fear Case was the next one, and then while we're working on Fear Case, we started talking about another idea, and he was telling me
you didn't even wait to finish it.
Yeah, no, it's because we're talking all the time, so he's like, I was like, what do you want to do next? And then he's like, I want to draw like 60s era, like Huey helicopters and M16s and something set in like Vietnam. Like he wanted to draw that kind of stuff. And I was like, okay, well, and then I came up with an idea that had all of those things he wanted to draw in it. And I was like, oh, it gave me an idea. And so I end up most of the time now I'm writing something for a particular artist. And with David Rubin was the same thing. When we wrote Cosmic Detective, it was for him, and then what's great is then when we're writing the script, it's just such a better collaboration because you know who you're working with, and you can kind of write it to their strengths, or if they want to do something, you can kind of scratch that itch for them. Yeah, and then I've found like the last year and a half or so, I've been writing so much I don't have time to draw, and so I'm looking. I have a list of like 10 new book ideas, and I was like, I'm picking one that is I'm going to draw it, but I haven't decided which one. I think I've decided, but then I'm so wishy-washy. I was like, well, I don't know. Maybe I'm not. I don't know. So we'll see. It's between two books that I'm going to draw, but I have to draw something. I just haven't drawn a book in a while, so I'm
that
getting antsy.
was going to be my other question. It's like you're writing so much, you maybe literally don't have time to draw, but
Yeah.
at least you've been able to narrow it down from 10 to 2, which is something, right?
Yeah. No, it's down to 2, and then of course I share a studio with my wife, and then Brian Hurd, who's in here too, and I was telling him the ideas, and I was like, it's between this and that, and he's like, you shouldn't draw that one. You're not the right artist for that one. And I was like, shut up, that's the one I wanted to draw. So now I'm debating whether or not I should do that one. We'll see.
You should just have it. You should just do that one because they're telling you not to do it. Not anyway.
I know. I'm going to do it out of spite.
It's like no. You don't tell me what to do. Like
yeah, I'll show you.
Exactly. Just I love that you just touched the subject of writing for a specific artist and not just writing general, because sometimes writers tend to just write and then we'll see. But if you're writing to a specific artist, you're writing to a specific strengths, or as you said before, with Tyler, what do you want to draw, or even they come to you, with the concept, and you follow up with that. Do you think that when that happens, it's not writer and artist? It becomes, like you guys create a third entity with that synergy. It's not exactly what you thought of. It's not exactly what the artist thought of, but that third entity creates something different.
Yeah, for sure. It definitely happens that way. And I know, it happens all the time. And I feel like, to me, there's no line between the writer and the artist in comics. Like there's always that debate of like, which one's the more important? And I was like, you can't have one without the other. And that's why that debate you'll never resolve it. I was like, there's not one that's more important than the other. And then I think, the more I've been just writer only, the more I try to break that barrier down all the way. Because I remember I was working on Bang with Wilfredo Torres, and that was another one. I was like, I think I'm going to draw this, and then I met him, and I was like, man, you'll be better at this. So but we were working on that first book, and then we started texting back and forth, and then we were kicking around ideas. I'm like, I was like, I kind of want to do. It was all based on like 80s like action tropes and different characters and everything. And then he had an idea he's like, what about, we started talking about the A-Team and everything. And then that back and forth, we ended up coming up with like an idea for book 2 together, where it's like, oh yeah. And then so we started kicking ideas around and everything. And then it was so fun because that wasn't my plan. Like I had a different idea for book 2, which we're still going to do, but it's like, that's more of a book 3 idea. Let's do this for book 2. And but I try to do that with all the artists. Like a lot of my scripts, I find I'm like, maybe this or maybe that. I try to give like some choice. Like I was like, depending on what visual they think, like I don't dictate anything. I mean, there's certain things like character and like some dialogue and stuff. But I really do try to get input from the artists and make them as involved, because they're telling the story too.
Exactly. And if you know them and they know you, they know what to expect, and you know what they are gonna like to do, right? It makes the work easier in the end.
Yeah, for sure. And honestly, we're trying to entertain each other, and try to make each other laugh or impress one another. But the thing is, to get to that point, there has to be no ego, right? Because I think like if I'm writing, it's like, oh, I'm the writer or whatever, and it has to be my vision and everything. I think then I feel like you're making the artist a production artist, and I never want to do that. I've drawn a couple of scripts where a writer wrote me a thing and I hated doing it. So then I'll never do it again. But I just don't want an artist to ever feel that way. And I think having done it and knowing what that feels like, it's just not, I don't want to, it's not fun to me.
It's not that's what you just told me just made me think something is, what if you just want to vision, why are you doing comics? Just write a novel, right?
Yeah, exactly. And it's but yeah, you definitely, it's definitely an ego thing. I think you there's no, I don't want there to ever be like some sort of power struggle or something. It's like, hey, let's have fun. We're making comics. Like if we're not having fun doing it, then we're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You know?
Let me see. Daniel Silverman says, "Hey, David and Matt. Matt, I love Ether. Is it possible to have more comics about the Etherverse, between brackets? Maybe invite other authors to explore that amazing world you created?"
Yeah, I always felt like every idea I have, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end to it. And so Ether was always like, this is what it was going to be. And then, but I'll say, I never say never, because I thought the same thing when I was doing mind management. I was like, well, this is it. And when that issue was done, I was like, that's all. Like, if I'm going to do something, it'll be in a different format. Like I did a book and record, or and we just did a board game that has some story elements to it. And so I always felt like if I'm going to do any more, it'll just be something weird or something to be creative. And but now I've came up. There's some more mind management stuff coming later in the year that's actual comics again and everything. So but I wasn't planning on it. It's just an idea sort of occurs to you, or you get older, or you get some perspective, and things change. So that's the long answer is yeah. I was like, I would never say no to more either. But I hadn't really thought about it yet.
But also it maybe is because I always ask this question: is there something that you wrote in the past that you think, oh my God, I wish I could write it now because I'm much better at what I do, and that feels like, nah. Has that happened to you in any time? You want to return to that world, the ether or other world, because you feel you could do a much better work now?
Yeah, no, I don't ever think, I never feel that way. No, what's funny is like I'll go back and look at work, and like especially if I've drawn it, I'm more self-conscious about the art. I'll go back and look. I'm like, oh, because the art is more, it's easier to see like how you've grown as an artist. It's right there in front of you. With writing, I think it's a little bit more difficult to sort of pick up on that. But every book I do, I was like, that's where I was at that time. It's a little time capsule of like the me that lived during that time and wrote that thing, and it's sort of like a souvenir of who I was then. And so I never really have I don't ever want to go back and make a thing better or change a thing. I was like, that's who I was then, and I'm a different person now. So yeah, I don't really like revisiting that stuff. And I have, like, I really have, the ideas never stop coming. So it's like to go back and revisit an old idea seems I don't know, it just seems like, well, then that's a new idea I'm not going to have time to do. So
see, George Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola, that's how you do it. You don't go back and redo it. You just do new things.
Yeah, no, it really is. It's like all the Star Wars is like the flaws and like sort of the crudeness of it and everything. That's the charm of it also. It's like, it looks like it was made in the era that it was made, in 1976. It looks like it, and it should look like that. I don't think it should look different. But the same with all my old books.
Every time I think about the Star Wars, the original, not Episode 4, New Hope, that he invented later. Just so you know, guys. But when you look at it, you see Alec Guinness didn't give a shit, and he even said in interviews, I didn't understand what the fuck they were doing. There has a lot of plot holes and all that. And you watch it and you are like, yeah, so what's the problem? That's how they made it. It's a product of that era. And I love it because of that. And then you see he tries to improve it. It's like, no, you're just making it worse. Stop.
Yeah, no, it just becomes it's the same. It's a little more difficult. One of my favorite movies is Apocalypse Now. So he keeps going back and adding scenes and making it longer. So, it's one of those movies that I watch like at least once a year. But now I'm like, well, now which version do I watch? Because I like the extra stuff in it, and I don't. So I'm always like torn. I'm like, and then I'm just watching the one with everything in it because I just want to see it all. But
yeah, I want to see it all. But by the end of the day, I keep thinking with that and the Godfather. He redid the Godfather again, like for the fifth time. And it's like, no, you're not going to make it better. You're not going to do The Godfather 3 a good movie. I'm sorry, you're not. It's like
Yeah.
your daughter was in it. She maybe is a good director. She's not a good actress. You made a mistake there. You're not going to fix that. And then he changes everything. So that fixed the new version of the third one. And Apocalypse Now, I don't know how many versions he has of Apocalypse Now already. So
Yeah, I know. I just bought the new set that's got all. To his credit, though, all of them are in there. Like I can watch any one I want, but now it's like, well, now I got to pick. So that's hard.
no, I don't want to pick. Give me the original. Give me the
I know.
documentary.
Yeah.
The documentary
Yeah.
his wife shot, which is also amazing.
Yeah.
And that's it. We don't need that. But that's the other side of it. Did you ever? The other side of the question I just asked. Did you ever say no to doing a project, either because a project somebody asked you to do, or something that you were creating on your own, because you thought, I'm not ready. You put it on a drawer and said, I will come back to it.
I'm trying to think. Trying to think if there's been a couple of projects that were like work for hire things. There were a couple of things when I was at Valiant where I was like, I just decided not to do it then. I didn't feel like the time was right, or I was worried about how it was going to end up. So I was like, let's not do it. And then I quit a thing at DC that I thought was going to be kind of a train wreck. So I was like, I don't want to do this one either. And then so I've quit a few things that are work for hire, but if it's a creator-owned thing that I'm doing, I'm so deliberative about like what I'm going to do and what I'm going to do next that it really is like I have that list of 10 things right now, which is really a list that's like from 40 things. So it's down to 10, and now there'll be like one that I draw, and then another couple that I'll try to pair with an artist. And then so it's that process is so slow and so like whatever. So it'll end up being like I'll get down to 2 and I'll be like, it's one or the other, and then I'll just pick one and do that. But yeah, there hasn't been a lot. Only like work for hire stuff. Has there been things where, because there's more people involved, that makes me a little more cautious, or it makes me nervous, or I'm not sure, or it's things change at the last minute and like, I don't think so. Let's not do it.
Is your tendency there is to do more and more create own and less, I hate the term, but corporate comics?
Yeah, and I got nothing against those, but yeah, I think earlier in my career I was like, it was fun. I was like, I want to write Spider-Man, just to say I wrote Spider-Man once, and I did that. I did a series of Marco Rudy, and it turned out great. It's really crazy, and I could check that off my list. Just like from a nostalgia point of view, it's like I grew up reading Marvel comics, so I wanted to do some of it. But yeah, the more I did of it, the more I'm like, it becomes the same problem that I was going to have going into filmmaking. Is like, there's too many people involved, and I don't have full control of it, and that's not why I got into comics. I got into comics because I'm a control freak when it comes to like the final product, right? And which is like, it goes against everything I said about like collaborating with an artist, and like there's no ego. But it's two of us, and we're working towards the same goal, and there's something good about that. There's nothing else involved, like money or like career or anything. It's all about just trying to make the coolest thing we can possibly make. Yeah.
No, and also there's another part that people doesn't realize. When they think about, I want to do Spider-Man or Batman or Justice League or Avengers, whatever, I always tell them, if you think that's going to be easier or funnier, it's not. The bigger you get into those universes, the more control is exerted over you, the more people is involved, and the less you're a writer and the more you are a pawn. I'm not saying anything against it, guys. Let's be honest. But you got to understand that you are part of a bigger machine, right? And the bigger the books are, the bigger the machine is. So it's got to be more frustrating for you as a writer, right?
Yeah, no, it's a different piece. And going in, and this has always been my sort of advice always, is like, when you sign the contract, you sign the contract, that's it, right? You have to stick to it. And it's like with work for hire and everything, you sign the contract and you're basically borrowing these characters, but they're not your characters, and you'll get notes that are coming from somewhere else. I remember getting notes on Suicide Squad that they were based on stuff that was going on with the movie, which I had nothing to do with and didn't know what was going on. And then the notes would come down that would impact the comic. And I was like, oh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Because, but I was also like, but I also signed the contract and I knew going in, like, this isn't my property, you know, it's like, I'm doing it for the fun of it. But, and so you do it as long as it's fun for you. And then if it's not fun, don't do it. You know, I never wrote anything where I was like, I really need the money or I need to, you know, I never did that. I always did it. And then when it stopped being fun, I stopped doing it. Or if I felt like I wasn't going to be proud of the final product, I would just not do it, you know?
And there's a set of different muscles that you use when you work in those characters and your own characters, or it's the same muscles just used in a different way?
Yeah, it's the same muscles. It's interesting because by the time I started writing like mainstream comics like Marvel, DC, and even Valiant, you know, they were coming to me. I'd already done enough of my own books that they were kind of coming to me to sort of like put my own voice into it or do my own kind of thing, and tell the story my way in a lot of ways. So it was good getting the work that way, where I could go in and be like, hey, I'm not just like a new writer. They need somebody to write this thing, and they're plugging me in. They're like, they wanted my voice, you know, to a certain degree. So I was lucky in that regard. But yeah, I don't know. But there's only so much you can do, and at the end of the day, you're using characters that have been around for years and have hundreds of issues, and then many writers writing it, and so you have to be. The box that you're working in is like, this is the character. You can't break the character, and so you try to tell a story within that box, which is kind of fun. It's almost like a writing prompt, you know. It's like, okay, well, let's write a whatever, Batman story. It's like, but you got to keep Batman. He's got to be true to who he is. But then, what story do you tell with that? So it's kind of a fun challenge, like a writing challenge. But yeah, after a while, it's like I just kind of want to. Part of the fun is like creating a character and making a character unique, and a lot of those. A lot of the bigger characters, they've been around so long. It's like, what can you possibly do? Like Batman is a character I wouldn't write. I was like, if I was going to write a Batman story, it would end up not being about Batman because we've got so much of it already. Like, I don't know what else to explore. I get him. I get it. So I don't know what I would do.
That could happen to me too, because I would be much more interested about telling stories about Gotham than I could be about Batman. He could be a character in the background, but you know, I always say Gotham is a character, so why don't we explore the character? There's so many stories there that we haven't told because they are all focused on Batman. So
yeah,
let's explore the town, right?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I wrote this one shot that was a Superman story that was like, and I rarely have this happen, but because I don't think about those characters like, oh, what would I do? But I had a Flash story.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I got a really good idea for a story with the Flash because of his power and the ability and how it works, and like a day in the life of the Flash. Like, what do you do? What could he possibly do in one whole day? And then I was like, I'm never going to get that. But then I got this opportunity to write like an issue of Superman, and I was like, oh, well, he's the second fastest man alive. So I'll just do a day. I took the Flash story and made it a Superman story where it's the same thing, where he could just do all of this stuff and like what that day is like from his point of view. And so that was interesting because really Superman's the same. It's like, what can you do that hasn't been done really well already, you know? And I think it's just harder. I think it is harder to write characters like that because if you're going to do a good Superman story, it's usually not about Superman at all. It's about something else.
Does it teach you to write those characters in a way, because you said it was a challenge? Does it teach you to create boundaries to yourself, to not break your own characters when you create your own stories?
Yeah. Every book I've ever done, I think I started doing it unconsciously as part of the writing process. Is I set up sort of these rules, like an unwritten rule for myself that I'm not going to break a certain rule. And usually it's not about a character. It's usually more of like a structural thing or like a storytelling thing. And I think the first book I was conscious of it was Two Sisters, which is my second book. And in that book, I was like, I'm going to write this story, and I'm going to write it in a way that there's no cuts from one scene to the next. It's like a one continuous story. So it reads like the flow of the book is all, it doesn't like, there's no establishing shot with a new location and time a jump, and captions and be like, Italy, whatever, the next day. There's nothing like that. It's just one long continuous stream. And I was like, oh, it was almost more of like a challenge to see like, oh, what happens when you write a comic like that? Like, what can you do it? And then how do you change scenes then? Because it's not just like one long scene. So how do you do it? So it forced me to figure out different visual ways to sort of show like the passage of time and like the change of location. But it ended up being really long. It's like almost like a 300-page book, because I couldn't use captions. But it was an interesting exercise for me to like figure out like how I was trying to push like, what can comics do, or what can you do differently? And every book, it ends up being like story driven or a character driven thing where I'm like, oh, there's not going to be any voiceover or no captions this time, or maybe I'll do something where it's just where there's absolutely zero dialogue. And I did that a lot in Mind Management. I did that a little more. Like every issue, I would try to come up with like a new kind of thing. Like there was one issue, there's an issue I did where I always wanted to do a silent issue. I don't know if I'm a huge nerd. So G.I. Joe issue 21, when I was a kid, it was a silent issue, right? It was an amazing issue.
I had Larry Hama here a couple months ago, and I think we spent 40 minutes just talking about that issue.
Oh yeah, you could totally talk about it.
I love it, like, like, oh my God. Every time I watch it, like, Jesus Christ, this is amazing.
I know, right? And it's like, especially at that time in that era, it's like pushing those like formal boundaries of comics and like doing something in a mainstream book like that he didn't have to do that. Like that was done just to show like how cool comics can be, and like, but it fit the story, and it's ninjas and everything, so they're gonna be quiet, and like all the concept of that was so amazing. And so I was like, I wanted to do that, and I think like a couple months earlier, Cullen Bunn and Brian Hurt, they did Six Gun, and I think they did a silent issue, and I was like, oh man, I want to do a silent issue. Why
they did it
why
before
didn't I
me.
think of that, right? Right? I didn't think, and so then I was like, I'm still gonna do it. You copying off G.I. Joe, I'm copying off you, copying off G.I. Joe. And their issue was great too, by the way. They weren't copying off; it was more of an homage and everything. And but I was like, I gotta pay homage to that too. So I ended up writing this issue. There was a silent issue, but it had the most lettering of any issue I've ever done, because my idea was to do it with thought balloons, which I never use. I've never written anything with thought balloons. And I was like, oh, it's Mind Management, so it seemed to like conceptually made sense. So it was a whole issue. It was like a big fight scene with all these characters, and it was all their thoughts. So it was all only thought balloons. So technically it was a silent issue because nobody talked the whole issue, but it was all just thought balloons.
And that's another question I have. Do you see, because I don't think there is any, but do you think is there any limits to the stories you can tell in comics in terms of everything? Because I think that comics is the only art form where you can change everything to make it fit your view. And I mean, I can even change the format, the paper, the size, I can change anything, and it's just going to still be a comic. That's why anytime somebody asks me, is that a comic? My answer is like, does it matter?
Yeah, no, I think that's the other reason I got into comics, because I felt like it's such a young art form. Like I love writing, right? But the chances of me like making an impact in like prose, writing fiction, just straight up, it's going to be like there's 1,000 years of writing I'm going against, and like it's just like there's less new ground to be broken there. And I felt like comics is like, man, nobody's tapped it for all of its potential yet. So I think we've done things certain kinds of ways and everything, but part of the fun for me was like, how do we do it? We can make it even better. What can we do that's different? You have prose and you have pictures, and then they can work together. They can work against each other. You can have them separate. There's so much you can do that it was just really exciting. And we haven't even still scratched the surface.
Yeah, that's something that also discussed with Scott McCloud, and we both said the same thing. Every time somebody says, "Oh, you cannot do that in comics," somebody from the next generation is going to come and crush it. And every generation we have, it doesn't happen in any other art form. In comics, is
Yeah,
every new generation just breaks it and says, "No, no, you telling me I cannot do it? Here it is." And the
yeah,
moment you do here it is, you don't realize, but you've created 5 new things, not one.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So, and also challenges you guys as creators, right? When you see, as you said, Colin or any other partner that does something, you are like, what? You did that? Now it's my turn, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, there's a competitive part of me too. That it's not to win, right? There's no prize to win,
No,
but it really is like,
it's part of being friends, right? Because you can poke it in the
yeah,
eye. I mean, as a friend, you can go like, you did, now it's my turn. You'll see. But it's not about the winning, right? It's not about the fun
yeah,
of
yeah.
creating.
No, it is. It's because I get a kick out of seeing what other creators do. I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. And it gets you excited to do something else, or try to do something to top that, or do something better, or even crazier. And I think that's what being part of a creative community,
Hmm.
that's the beauty of it, is it's like you push each other to be better and to do more and to try something different.
Hmm.
And it's tough. In comics, it's tough though, because the bar to create it is higher, and
Hmm.
because you got to be able to draw, and you got to be able to write, or you got to be able to pair with somebody that you can work together with. So it's a little bit different, as far as an art form goes. I think it can be more difficult in some ways.
But it also pushes you to be different, right? To be different, I mean, from your own self, from the same Matt writer, not Matt the person, of course, but same Matt the writer cannot be for Tyler or for Brian or for David Rubin, right? It's like, you have to become a different writer because he's a different artist and you're expecting to get something different, right? So in a way, you have to mold yourself to be different writers than if I'm a novelist, I'm a Stephen King, I just do my thing. But
Yeah,
if you're
yeah,
working with an artist, you have to think, no, I cannot write that because that's for Brian, and David wouldn't like to draw it. You know what I mean?
yeah, yeah. No, it's totally true. It's in a lot of ways, it's like I'll have an idea, and then it's like casting, right? Like you got to
Hmm.
get the right person in the right role. So there's books I wouldn't do with Tyler, and there's ones that I would only do with David,
Hmm.
with Fredo. It's like I try to pair the person with the project.
Hmm.
Like I got a bunch of ideas, and then there'll be something that's like I'm just going to draw it because I want it to be. And those are the ones I want it to be exactly how I see it. Like other ones, uh, it's fun to collaborate and then have the artist bring in something. But there's a few books, they're just personal to me, that if I'm drawing it, it's because it has to be a certain way,
Hmm. Makes
and
sense.
I don't want to be a dictator.
Makes sense. You said before that comics is a really young art form, but for some people, including myself, we think it's the oldest art form because every time I look at
Yeah,
the cavemen, what I see, throwing the spears, running, with they're throwing like 4 arrows at the same time, or you see 8 legs. They're trying to tell a story. They're trying to tell a comic in a way. So, how
yeah,
important do you think it's for you as a creator to use pattern recognition? I mean, to let the reader, this is Batman, shape, ear, coal.
hmm
We know who it is. We don't need to, draw the whole thing. People is going to understand. How important is for you as a creator to say less is more, let's give the reader space so they fill in the gaps.
yeah. No, it's interesting because I think a lot of what you have to consider is like the reader's expectation.
Hmm.
And it's like I think there's a level of art that most people, or most comic book readers, right? They want it a certain way, or they'll flip through it, and it's like, they'll just put it down there's not a level of detail there, or a style that
Hmm.
they're expecting or wanting, and then they just won't get them to pick it up. And I think that's always the push and pull.
Hmm.
It's like you want, like I don't like a lot of detail, but I also do like a lot of detail. Like I'm a huge fan of Jeff Darrow and everything, so I
Yeah,
love
same
that.
thing,
Like
same thing.
I eat that up, but at the same time, um, like I think Darwin Cook was amazing at like
Mhm.
stripping it down to the minimum, almost the
Yeah.
as little as possible. Especially the Parker books he did and everything. I was like, there's some pages where there's hardly any line there. It's just like and it's just amazing. And then honestly, like Chris Ware did it really well too. He would have like really detailed drawings, and then he'd have things that were just like stick figures. It all works. It just depends on what the story is. And I think that's the thing I'm trying to push is like, I think comic readers, I would love for that to expand, where it's like you're more open to different styles, and it's like start reading it, and then once you're into the story, the art and the words, they sort of suck you in, and the art kind of disappears after a while. If it's done well, it doesn't make you stop and look at every panel. It makes you keep turning the pages, and that's the kind of art I like.
In a way, it's not talking down to your reader, right? Just expecting that your reader is going to get it, and you're going to be able to change the art in a way, somebody's thinking, you're telling a story, and suddenly we are in the mind of a child, and you start drawing, in a more childish style, and the reader is going to follow it, right? They're going to understand it. So you have to trust your reader to take some risk, right?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, to me, the best example is David Mazzucchelli, who I was a fan of when he was drawing Daredevil, right? That's how I learned about him. He's the Daredevil, Born Again. It was like one of the best superhero books ever, and so I followed him. I was like, God, this guy, he's my favorite artist, and then he went and did Rubber Blanket. And so I was so excited. I was like, oh, here we go. Robert, it's all David Mazzucchelli. And I got the first issue. It's really big. Cover looks cool. And I opened it up. I was like, what is going on? It's like he was painting with the end, or brushing with the other end of the brush. It was real chunky and rough. And then, and this is me in like, I don't know what year it was, but I was young. I was still a teenager, I was coming off of Daredevil. Daredevil is what that was my favorite book. And so he comes out with Rubber Blanket, and I'm like, what's happening? What happened to us? And then I was like, oh, and then I started reading it, and then you start to realize like the art is for the story. It's not to look, he's not trying to impress you with it. He's trying to tell a great story and make you feel it and try these different things. And then I think that was the first time where I was like, oh, I'm just immature in my view of what art is, and then by the time I got to art school and took a ton of art history, and then you start to broaden your horizons, that's like my favorite thing, like that late stage Mazzucchelli is like some of my favorite stuff, but it's all about the storytelling.
It's crazy. I see every time I see some new Mazzucchelli, you're like, oh, Daredevil, Batman, then Rubber Blanket, then City of Glass, then and all the way you get until Asterios Polyp, and you are like, every time they're like just amazed, like, okay, again and again and again. Every time he does something, is just how can he keep still getting better and different and and create new ways of doing comics, right?
No, and to me that's what it's about. Comics isn't about like pretty pictures, it's about storytelling. So to me, like, the art needs to be telling the story, and even if you go back and look at the Daredevil stuff, I'm like, it's rendered realistically, but the storytelling is so good, and like it's like and I know he wasn't writing it, but it's still just the picking of the moments to show, and the panel transitions and everything. It's all just as good. Like
in a way, there's always the urge to tell stories that makes you a comic creator, right? And not any other creator. You have to tell the stories, and you have to be in the polls. But what do you think about? Sorry, let me rephrase that. How important is for you the silence? How important is for you in comics? Those moments those moments where we are in a high, and then we need those moments of silence to reflect, to stop, and get the reader to really go in depth into what you're telling.
Yeah, no, it's those are my favorite moments, right? Like, and you kind of need those little beats. And I if there's an editorial note, I'm always fighting, or whenever I'm working with whatever work for hire stuff, and then I'm always fighting for the silent panel. It's like, well, no, we don't need a line here, or whatever. Let the art do the let the art do the storytelling. And it's a it's a joke between me. I work with Warren Simons a lot on we're doing the Bad Idea books, and then we worked at Valiant for years.
Yeah.
And so it's our joke now. Like he's the best editor I've ever worked with, you know, as far as like story, and like and he really digs down, and like we work hard, and like I consider him like a collaborator as much as the artist in a way, you know, like we talk story ahead of time, and then mold the thing, and but then my joke is, I was like, I'll have a silent panel. I was like, don't put a line in there. We're not putting a line in there. And he'll laugh. He's like, I'm not asking you to. But it's funny. So I'm always fighting for like those beats, because it is, you want to let the magic of comics is like the story and the words, or the art and the words, you know, and like the way they mix together. And sometimes you just take the words out. I fear case when I was writing with Tyler, I don't know why I overwrote the whole thing. Like there was so much dialogue. It was really a dialogue driven book. And then I went through and I just stripped out, like, I know it's still really heavy with dialogue, but I stripped out like half of it. Because I was like, it's too much. Like his art is so atmospheric and great. I was like, I just wanted to get the letters off the page to like give the book atmosphere, you know. And it's like the more words I had on there, the worse it was.
By the way, guys, on Friday, Warren Simons, he just mentioned, and Dinesh Samdasani from previously Valiant, now Bad Idea, so don't miss it. And how important are page turns for you?
Yeah, they're really important. I write everything around them. You know, you try to get the beats right, and there's nothing worse than having, you're writing the thing out, or I usually start with an outline, and I'm like, oh, okay, and then I actually start scripting it, and then I'm like, oh, dang it, it's on the it's like the page turn is on the odd page, so it's going to be on the right side. And so then I do everything I can to like, okay, is there something I can move or shift? And I'm constantly moving things around to get the page turn right. And so yeah, it's always a concern.
Let me go back to the people here. So Dan Fledler says, I know I'm just 7 years late to the party, but I just read the Star Wars Rebel Heist. Awesome book. Loved it.
Yeah, thanks.
Dan Fledler says, Mind Management with David Rubin, right?
I don't, how does he know that? That may or may not be true. I can't deny it or confirm it. I will say that
there's no lawyers here, so nothing.
No, I think he tweeted something out. Somebody guessed it on Twitter. He tweeted something out that was just enough of a clue. But man, he did a cover. He did maybe the best cover I've ever seen. Like last week, he turned a cover in for something, this mystery project, and it was so good. I was like, oh my god, this is why I'm not drawing it. Like I can't do what he's doing right now. It's so good. But yeah, Rebel Heist, the Star Wars book, is something they asked me to do, and then I turned it down. I was like, I don't want to do like, I'm a huge fan of Star Wars. Like my earliest memory is going to see Star Wars in the theater. I was like 3 or 4 years old, and I remember it. And I was like, I don't want to have a bad experience working on Star Wars because of editorial or this or that, and with continuity and everything. I was like, I want to just be a fan. And then so I turned that job down, and then yeah,
the original LP from when the movie was released.
I have that as well. Did you buy? They had a re-release. Did you see this? There was a new one. They had like the hologram thing in the middle, where like if you shine a light on it, like your phone light, and when it's spinning, it makes like a 3D Millennium Falcon or TIE Fighter. I can't remember. No, it's really cool. It's insane.
This is the original one.
Yeah. Anyway, so you know what I'm talking about. Well, that's why I didn't want to. I was like, I don't want to put myself in it, right? Like that's something that is like a childhood thing where it's like I want to be a fan of it. And then the next day I was in the shower and I was like, oh, what would I have done though? Like if I was gonna do it, what would I do? And then I thought of this idea and I was like, oh man, maybe I will do it. And so then I ended up emailing him back like a couple of days later. I was like, hey, I have an idea. I'll do it if I can do this idea, which is basically writing a Star Wars story, but from the point of view of like just a regular person, like a stormtrooper or like another character, a rebel, like a generic rebel guy, but writing it from their point of view, working side by side with or interacting with like Han Solo and Chewbacca and Princess Leia, and then was it Luke the last one? I can't remember. It's been a while, but the idea, yeah, Luke was the last one, and but with the idea that I'm writing then from my point of view, so like the generic rebel guy is me. It's like, what's it like, or like the stormtrooper interacting with Chewie, and like, oh, what would that be like? And I was like, oh, I think Chewie would kind of smell. He would kind of smell bad. So like, it gave me all this like this fun way to be like, I was walking around in Star Wars, and I'm like, oh, this is Han Solo is so cool. And Princess Leia is the best, and it let me write it from that point of view as a fan. It was like really just like super fan fiction, and they let me do it, and so it was really fun. I got to kind of be in Star Wars, but I felt like I was an observer, just like looking at it and like sort of like highlighting the stuff that I like or the things I thought were cool.
But how much fun was that?
It was so fun.
Do it that way.
Yeah, it was so fun. I was like, can I do cover? I got to do variant covers and everything, and I'm like, there was no interference. Like there's only one little continuity thing because there was a heist, so it's like, well, what are they gonna get? I didn't want to get into continuity, but the idea was that and this is a spoiler, but it's been out for a while. But the heist was for those shield generators on Hoth, those like round, and I had the toy of those. I had these they had these little metal die-cast figures, and I had the toy for those. And I was like, oh, what if that's how they have to get those things? They have to get the shield generators. So the whole story was like stealing the pieces of that to put it together. So they have the shields on Hoth. And that was like my fun little nerd moment.
Pedro Mercader says, hello, everyone. Matt, what process do you follow in screenwriting? I guess his scripts. Do you approach the same way the books you draw and the books you don't?
No, it's totally different. If I'm drawing it, I tend to just have an outline with page breakdowns of like the action that's happening, and then I'll have a little bit of dialogue written in, and then I'll just draw the whole thing. And as I draw it, I'll add pages or move things around, and then go back and then do the dialogue and everything after it's all done. But it's all kind of running in my head, but I don't bother typing it up because it's just for me. So I'll just do that, and then it actually changes more. I do a lot of my writing while I'm drawing it because it takes so long to draw that I'm just thinking about it, and I'm like, oh, and I'll write little notes to remind myself. So yeah, but then for an artist, I'll do the full script and then describe everything, and I'll put like photos in there for photo reference if there's like a visual idea I have, and then I'll have like, sometimes I'll have options. I was like, this, or what about this? So I'll have like little branching options for the artist. And then he said screenwriting. I did write 2 screenplays this year based on a couple of my books. And that process is totally different. It's really different. Like I write very detailed outlines with every scene broken down and a little bit of dialogue, and then go back through and then write the whole thing, but it's so much less description. Like it's, in a way, it's you're not describing hardly anything. It's almost all dialogue driven. It's a little bit of like this happens, but it's as minimal as you can make it. Like it's almost like writing a screenplay is almost like it's the difference between writing a prose novel and writing a book of poetry. So you're really choosing your words because you have the strict page count. It's got to be 120 pages to 2 hours, and so you have that strict page count. So you're using every word as carefully as you can because you don't. Any extra line is like you need it, and so it made me be much more efficient in like what I described and how I described it, and also like it's the same applies with dialogue. The dialogue, you get more of it. I feel like there was more chance for dialogue and back and forth and everything. Where in comics, if you do that, it's just like talking heads and it's boring. So that was a little bit fun, a little bit different.
How many drafts do you have to make of every script?
Oh my God, I don't even want to look. I don't want to look. The first one is the hardest, because honestly, I was also learning like a new format. Like I had to format it the right way, and then that condensing and that being careful with word choice, that didn't come. I didn't start out knowing that. Like I had to learn it over draft after draft after draft. But I was working with a really good producer who's really patient and like sort of gave me very honest feedback. You know, I was like, you know, and it just really helped. And so by the end of it, I was like, oh, well, the next one will be twice as fast.
Mm-hmm. Let me see. Congratulations on the BRZRKR Netflix thing. Was it planned to be adapted since the beginning?
No, you know, we never talked about it. And I talked to Keanu, and he's like, and then the questions he would get, it was like, we're working on the comic, you know, and then even now we're still working on the comic. That's happening kind of in the background, you know, but we're still drafting like the final 4 issues and everything, and working on the outline. We had an idea, and now and we have a better idea. So we're and which always happens, like it's such a long project, so you're working on it towards this goal, and we're like, oh, this is, and so we're always revising as we go. But yeah, we never approached the project, and then that was one of the reasons why I was interested in doing it. I was like, oh, he's into comics, you know, and he wants to make this a good comic, and I assume him being who he is, I was like, I know that's probably going to happen at some point, right? Like that's probably why. And it was probably, and this is just me guessing, it's probably an idea where it's like, it's hard to get things made. Like he had a really good idea and a really personal idea, you know, and it's like, what better medium to do it in than comics, where nobody's interfering with it. You know, we have unlimited budget because it's art, right? So we can do anything, make it as big or as small as we want. No one is bothering us, and just tell the story exactly how we want to tell it, and then let the other end of it figure itself out when we get there.
And the question that you've been asked a million times, probably. I'm not messing with you, Pedro. That's a good question. How was it to write with Keanu?
It's good. It's still good. We're still writing. He's all the good story, all the nice things everyone says or whatever. It's like that times that you don't even know. I can't even tell you how good it's been, you know. And he's just such a good collaborator and like super invested in it. And we go over every line of dialogue, every panel description, you know. Like it's intense, you know, because he's not just putting his name on it. Like he's so involved, like he's so hands-on that it's just like we have these long emails and it's like back and forth, or he'll text me an idea and be like, hey, what about this? And I'm like, all right, I'll put it on our list of ideas for the end. And we're just constantly working on it. So it's like, it's super intensive. And I can't tell you like how much fun it is. I've only collaborated with one other writer. Like Jeff Lemire is the only other guy I've collaborated with on writing. And it's fun. I've had 2 writing collaborators, and they've both been amazing, you know. So I don't know that it's always that way, but it's, when you get it, it's just, it's like hanging out with your friend and like cooking up like fun ideas and like trying to entertain each other, and I don't know, it's unique.
How do you divide the work with Jeff? Now you mention it, is who takes care of what, or is just whatever happens?
Yeah, we usually we've done it a couple times, and like our usual process is we sit down and then we just like cook up an idea, like, oh, what about this, what about that, and then one of us will be type up a rough outline like as we go, or we'll just talk about it, and then one of us will type it up, an outline of what we talked about, and then send it to the other, and then we just have like this big outline of like all of it, and then we'll break down the scenes and we'll kick that back and forth. So we're just kicking back an outline back and forth, and then with the Valiant and with Cosmic Detective, like what we end up doing is, once the outline is set and we sort of have we have a list of all the scenes we're doing, then we just sort of split them up. With the Valiant, I think we cherry pick the parts we wanted to write, and so like, you write that, you'll write that, and we just try to balance it out so we're doing it equal. And with Cosmic Detective, we did it a little different, where he I was like, well, you write. I think he wrote I can't remember who started it. I think he wrote it first. I remember he wrote the first scenes, and then sent it to me, because I remember I was really busy at the time. I was like, oh my god, I can't, now the ball's in my court and I gotta continue, I gotta write the next part, but I was having trouble getting to it. And then I finally did. I was like, okay, good, I'm gonna sit. And so I wrote the next couple scenes, and then I left him with like a cliffhanger and then sent it back. And then he would write the next part and then send it back. And then just over the course of a year or so, we would just kick it back and forth. And it was fun because we had the outline, but also it was fun to sort of throw in like crazier stuff and like sort of like turn up the volume on some things. And
That's
then
what I was gonna ask. Did you guys keep? Sorry to interrupt you. Did you guys keep sending curveballs to the other?
yeah, we would. It was almost like we were trying to entertain the other person, right? Like I'm like, oh, you're gonna love this part or whatever. Here's a little twist, or you end it in a way that's like, now what do I do with that? You know, it's like I know where we're going, but like, how do I? So it was really fun. It was a different way to write it, and then we got all that done. It was like a big Frankenstein thing put together, and then we go back through and then we sort of smooth out the seams, you know, and make it work as a whole. But yeah, it was fun. It was like a, I don't know, it was almost more like a game, like a fun game you're playing with a friend. Yeah.
That was the next question. Did it become a puzzle for you guys, like a board game, and you had to solve it after all the
Yeah,
writing?
no, yeah, the outline was all done, so it was almost more like a coloring book where we just had fun. I'm like, I'm gonna put this crazy color in there. And then, but yeah, it was fun.
Richard Logan says, "Love the Eniac series. Where did he get the idea from?"
It was straight up history. I think I was researching some art, AI stuff. I think it might have happened when I was I don't know what book I was working on. I was looking at like first computers and artificial intelligence, and like one of the first computer was Eniac, was a real thing. Like if you look on Wikipedia, I can't remember what, this is terrible. Eniac stands for something. It's like something computer. It's like the first computer. But I was like, oh, that's, when I was reading about it, I was like, that'd be a great idea. Like, what if it really was like, that's how all ideas, it's like this, but like, oh, but what if they programmed it with everything? What if it was really big? And what if there was all these punch cards and tubes and everything? I was like, what if they just hired like an army of people to input everything they could possibly input into it, and then it was like the first AI, and then that was kind of the idea. Then like, how did it impact world history from World War II, or like when it was invented, to present day, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And anyway, so that was the idea. But then I also I was like, I've seen the story of like killer AI or AI that turns on humans, or I was like, I didn't want to do that. So this is a book that looks exactly like that, and it's not at all that.
Mm-hmm.
But when you get to the end.
Okay. Claudio Stasi says, what a great creator. Praise for you, Claudio. You're also an amazing creator, just so you know. Nico Rodriguez. Hi, Matt. What kind of brush inking tools did you use for the lines on Mind Management? I love how they flow with the watercolors.
Yeah, with Mind Management, I used this the number 2 sable haired. It was like a round brush, and I went through so many of those because brushing on or inking on watercolor paper, the paper's so rough that it starts to like kind of dull the brush.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have no idea how many of those I went through, but you'd use one, after a while you couldn't get the thin lines anymore, so that became like the filling in the black brush, and then I started a new one. And so I used that, and I think towards the end I found these sort of Japanese brush pens, and they're not they're refillable, so you can buy these little cartridges that refill.
The pentals?
I don't know what it's all Japanese writing on it, so I have no idea what they're actually called.
Okay.
But if you go to jetpens.com and type in brush pens, you'll find them. They're plastic. They look cheap. They seem like disposable. And I started using them at conventions. I was like, oh, take these conventions and try them out. Like, these are pretty good, and the nylon tips, they don't wear out either. So they end up being what I switched to because they're refillable and they don't wear out. And they end up being great. They look like cheap pieces of junk, but they're actually like really good. They hold the lines really well, and you can ink faster because you're not dipping and putting in. The ink's already in there. And the other trick though was, I've never been able to find a pen like that because they make tons of brush pens, but they're not always waterproof, and so like painting over the top of it was always a problem. you know. But these are they ended up being waterproof too, so they were perfect.
So those ones saved you from committing suicide for deciding, what did I decide to do this with the what colors on that
Yeah,
paper?
no, it didn't really save me. By the time I got done with mind management, issue 36, I was so burned out. I was like, I took a couple months off of just everything. I was like, I was so tired because it was like 24 pages plus covers, back covers every month for 3 years. It was a lot.
Even writing, you even needed those months to out of writing. You know, like I
Yeah,
just need
I
rest.
needed to. Yeah, I was like, I needed just some time off from doing anything. Like thinking about it was driving me a little bit crazy. But
Yeah, I can
I was
imagine.
I was writing other books while I was doing my management too. It wasn't the only thing I was writing. So it was whatever. I think I hit it was at just the right time in my life where I was still young enough I could pull it off, you know, and then but then young enough to learn the lesson that don't ever do that. Don't do a monthly book all by yourself ever again.
Yeah. Did you were at that time were the other books you were writing also like a lifeboat? You know, when you could get away from mind management for a while and say, I'm going to change the pace, focus my mind on something else. No.
No, they were. I remember going to bed. There was a time where I was doing my management. I was writing a book for Marvel and a book for DC, and I would go to bed at night and close my eyes to try to sleep. And then my brain was just like spinning because I had to come up with like plots for like the next issue or whatever, or figure it out. And I was like, and I kept jumping. I remember one night in particular, I kept jumping from like a Marvel book to DC book, but I was worried about my management at the same time. And I was like, I'm having trouble sleeping. So I was like, that's too many. I'm doing too many books.
Uh-huh.
And so then I started slowly, I scaled back and everything. But honestly, mind management was like that was like the lifesaver in a way, because I would write like 6 issues at a time, and then just being able to like ink and turn my brain off for a while, or paint
Hmm.
for like a couple of days in a row with nothing else, that helped me sort of relax.
Hmm. Process question. When you, you know, for you, do you need sound to work, or do you need everything to be quiet, or it depends on the parts of the process?
Yeah, it doesn't matter. What's funny is like some days I'll get in and I'll start working, I'll forget to play music, uh, and then it'll just be silent all day. And then other days I'm like, oh, I'll mess around, I'll play music, and then and just hear it all day. It doesn't matter. Like everything melts away. Like there's nothing around me when I'm writing. It's like I don't pay attention. I don't notice anything.
Hmm.
So my wife's always like, how can you write and then have those music with lyrics and everything? I was like, oh, because I don't know. I don't listen to the lyrics. I
Yeah.
don't hear anything. And but yeah, that's why um, I don't like to write when I'm traveling or somewhere out, because it's like I feel like it's a wasted experience, because then I kind of disappear, right? Like
Mhm.
I just feel like I dissolve and I'm in the story, and then I could be anywhere. So I might as well just be at home. So I try not to write when I'm out somewhere.
Mhm. I always, I'm always asked about that, and I always say I need the sound, but it's not, as you said, it doesn't matter if there's lyrics or not. It's cacophony. It's like
Yeah,
I am the fifth of five brothers. As you can imagine,
yeah,
my parents' apartment was fucking loud.
yeah,
So if there's any time where it's no sound at all around me, I always think, like Jack from The Signing is going to come behind my back, trying to kill me with a knife. Like, there's no sound, something weird is happening. Does that happen to you too? If there's absolutely no sound, you are like, okay, this is weird, something wrong is happening.
yeah. No, it honestly, once I start, it doesn't. Silence doesn't bother. Nothing bothers me. It doesn't. There's
You get in the
nothing.
zone in that, and it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah, no, it is too. And then my wife will say something to me too, and I'm like, you must have told me while I was writing, because I didn't hear anything.
That
Yeah,
happens. That happens a lot to my wife too. During lockdown, she was working there,
yeah,
and
yeah,
and every time she got in the zone with the work, uh, I could talk to her, and it was like first she didn't hear, and when
yeah,
she heard, I could look at her face like she's not really listening. So I could ask her in like 30 minutes, no clue. because she was,
Yeah,
completely focused, and I couldn't. I'm the opposite. But with her, that she's in the zone, like, don't ask me when I'm in the zone because I'm not going to remember what we discussed.
yeah. No, my wife knows. She knows now or whatever. She can tell when my eyes are like this. And I'm just like, but it's neat. But that's part of the best part of writing to me is also that where it's like I'm inhabiting this world with these characters, and it's like it's like the craziest kind of escapism,
Absolutely.
like it's like a virtual reality in a way where you're wandering around and just describing what you're seeing.
Mhm. And we don't need the glasses, just so you know. We live in our
Yeah,
world
yeah,
without need the glasses. It's called
yeah.
imagination, you bastard. Anyway, um, what is it for? If I ask you comics storytelling, what is it for you? Is it rock and roll? Is it jazz? Or is it a symphony? What would you say?
Jazz. I guess I'm a big jazz fan, so I yeah, I'd say that. I One of my favorite sequences is in Cages. Dave McKean's Cages is where there's an issue where the guy is just in this nightclub and I can't remember what he's even talking about, and then but the way he laid it out in the story, he's like it's just this guy talking in this underground nightclub, and he lights this match and he blows it out, and that's the end of the issue. And I was like, that's it for me, like that the pacing of that and everything, and it's a little bit jazzy, but literally jazzy, but yeah, it's improvising, is what it is for me. It's not there's like a structure, but then within that structure, there's places where you just make stuff up as you go along, and
Mhm.
then like in the writing, but also like the art for me is like I don't pencil really tight because I want to have when I'm inking it, I don't want to be bored. It's
Mhm.
almost like uh yeah, I don't want to. I'm not just chasing the lines. It's like I want to have a little bit of excitement of like, oh man, I don't want to mess this up, but what should I do here? And sort of keep me keep my brain going,
Mhm.
while I'm inking it. And so and also like I think if you overwork art, like you can tell when an artist overdoes it. Like the pencils are always the best stage because that's where all the action and the life of it is.
Yeah.
And then a lot of inkers or when you're inking your stuff, you just kill the life out of it, like because it's so precise and so whatever. You just lose that energy, and I try to keep that.
But as a creator, you always want to keep it alive, right? Sometimes you just overwork it, and you realize the next day you see the page and you're like, oh my god, why did I do work? Why did I overwork it so much? When the
Yeah,
pencil stage, as you said, was a lot more alive, right?
yeah. No, and it's funny. Like what's great about working in the studio, like I share it with Brian and my wife too, and then they'll come by and look, and then looking at a piece while you're working on it, and I can't tell you how many times when my wife has been like, stop, stop right there. I was like, no, 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 I want to do it. She's like, no, 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 it's done. You just don't know it's done yet. So, but it's great to have that second set of eyes. And I do the same thing with Brian. We, like my favorite, his pencils are so great. And I was like, don't you ink, don't over ink that. Don't you do it. And then my favorite stuff of his is we do these little 5x7 watercolors where he'll like pencil and he does this loose pen lines, and it's my favorite art of his. It's like it's the quickest thing he can do, but it's like there's so much energy in those that it's I just want him to keep doing that. But again, that goes back to like expectations of the reader, right? Like
Mhm.
readers expect a certain level of detail and sort of polish and finish to it, and that's the thing I'm always fighting against. I'm like, no, if you could have seen this stuff in the penciled stage when it still had like this real energy to it, that's the stuff. It's like, yeah, there's not as much detail, but it's like it's just better.
Mhm. Tito James asks you, what's the best piece of storytelling advice you've ever gotten?
uh Gosh, I guess the best one is like kind of uh the standard advice for anything is like start the scene late and end it early. Is that right, or did I get it wrong? Yeah, yeah, you want to start it late so you're already in it, and then end it before you don't let it keep going on. So that's probably the best storytelling advice.
Mhm. Uh, Also on Cosmic Detective, Tito asks, how do you script creative paneling sequences? David is known for his use of creative paneling.
Yeah, we don't we just like David. I we both have worked with David in the past, so you kind of know I was like, it's 5 panels, but I think he posted a screenshot of the script on one of the pages where they're like, hey, this is what you do here, you know, like it's always, to me, the panel descriptions and the panel counts are always suggestions, especially for David, because it's like I want him to do that, you know, but I'm not going to write a 20 panel page for him because I'm not a horrible human being, you know. But I was like, if you want to draw a 20 panel page, I'm gonna let you do
it. That's like I think it was Kelly Sue who told me that, you know, every time there's been no time where she sent a script to Emma, you know, to Emma Rios. Like every time I send like 2-3 panels, and I've never gotten any page that is not at least, you know, double the panels that I put on the page.
Yeah.
So it's like, I've never put on those many panels. That wasn't me. That wasn't me. It was her.
Yeah. No, I don't do that. I tend to run long on my panels, though, depending on like the format, what the book is, and how many pages. That's something I've been sort of debating lately too, or talking about with other creators, is like how many panels on a page. Like some artists, they want 3 panels on a page and they want to just do big. And but I'm like, I tend to prefer, I'm from like the Will Eisner school of like, I want a lot of panels telling the story. I want to see the action happening and everything, and get the sequential art part of it. You know, I think a lot of modern comics, like the thing I don't like that doesn't suck me in is like it almost is like an illustrated story rather than sequential art. And I think that's the line where I do want to write more panels, because I want to see a little inset or a little action here or there. And I know that modern comics, it's a lot of them just turn me off, because I'm like, it's cool drawing, but it's not like sucking me into the storytelling.
And that's also a part of using the tools. Okay, let me go straight to it. My crazy theory that I always say, and you can send me to hell if you don't agree, it's like comics is the only art form that can defy Einstein's theory of relativity, because we control time and space in a way no other art form can. I mean, this is a movie, The Arrow of Time. This is a novel, The Arrow of Time. They can use flashback, whatever, but it always feels, you know, like out of place. But in comics, you can control using, you know, the panel shapes, which is another great part of using panels and not just go for the big one. You're controlling time because of the shapes, you know, and the sizes. But also you can, you know, just do this, and you just told something has happened or a moment on, and you can go the Watchmen way, which I always say. Sorry if I'm running long. Issue 1, a page, Laurie's in the background, and then in issue 5 we see her in the foreground, and we realize, wait, that's exactly the same moment they told us on issue 1 from her perspective, and you know it without Alan or Dave, you know, saying a word about it. It's just there. They let it for the reader to see. What do you think about that? About the control we have of time and space in comics?
Yeah, no, I think to me, that's the best comics. That's what makes them the best comics, is like it's not even necessarily or at least for me, it's like I want a story where like I need to go, if I go back and reread it, I get something new out of it.
Right,
like my favorite movies are the movies where I have to rewatch them, and every time I watch it, I get something new out of it. And comics is the same way. And I think that if you have a 20-page comic with 2 or 3 panels on a page, I was like, there's not what's there, you know, like I get it. I get the story. It took me 10 minutes to read it. And even if I read it again, I was like, there's nothing new there. That's why I really strive to write comics. I want to make comics like that, where it's like there's to me, I call them little time bombs, right? Like, so it's like a thing, I set this thing and it's ticking, and like it may not blow up when you're done reading it. It may not blow up like the second time through. The third time through, you're like, oh my God, this thing's going on, and I didn't notice it until this time. So like I try to plant those in everything to reward repeat viewing. You know, it's like a lot of things. One is like comics are expensive, and it's like I don't want you to read a thing in 10 minutes and then be done. I'm like, you could get more out of a TV. There's so many things we're competing with: television and movies and video games. I'm like, comics, there has to be a reason why you're gonna spend money on this thing and then spend time with it. If it's 10 minutes of your time, that's like, that doesn't seem worth it.
Mhm.
you know.
But
But if it's a thing where I'm like you maybe sense that you didn't get it all the first time, and then you go back and look at it. That's my those are my favorite comics. And, you know,
mhm.
that's kind of I'm trying to make, because I think that's the future of comics. Really, it's not they're not storyboards for movies. You know, they're their own thing, and it's and they can do so many things with time and place, and like and then the beauty of it is like you don't, as a creator, you don't have total control over the reader. And like
Yes,
they're
yes,
an
yes,
active
yes. That was
participant, you know.
you read
Yeah,
my mind. That was going to be the next question.
yeah, right. Because the movies are your passive observer. You are on that ride and you're not getting off of it. Like unless you close your eyes and turn away, you're not getting off. Where with comics, it's like the reader is such a part of it, where they're like they can go back and look, you know, or they can pause, you know, and then if it's 2 pages and you didn't do the page turn right, they already see the thing
Yes.
down here, whether they wanted to or not, you know. So that's why that is important. So there's things you can do to manipulate that, but I think you forces you as a creator to be a little more subtle, or be a little more creative, and and I tend to give the reader a lot of credit. You know,
Mhm.
it's like you'll work to figure it out, you know. And the comic should work the first time through. If you're reading it in 10 minutes, it should work that way. You
Yep.
should have been
Yep.
entertained,
Yep.
and you get it. But I always want to do a book where like you get it, where you're like, I think maybe I missed something, or maybe feel like a little paranoid, like I don't, something's going on here and I don't quite
Mhm.
get it. You know, Alan Moore always made me feel that way. Watchmen, I read that so many times because I was like, there's more going on here.
Yes.
Like it's not just this, you know.
Mhm.
And then it would make me, I would go back and reread it. Then I'm like, oh my god, this other thing, you know, the Rorschach issue where it's like parallels itself.
Yeah.
I was like, that's how many times did I read it before I got that? So I'm
Mhm.
trying to. I feel like those are the comics that stand the test of time, right? Those are the ones that you'll go back and revisit. And then as you get older, like you get more, like I get more knowledge, you know.
Mhm.
I feel like I get smarter or
Yep.
whatever, and I go back and look at an old thing. And then if I can go back and look at an old book and find something new in it, that's just like amazing.
Mhm.
That's why I read.
Absolutely. And Adam Hughes got the perfect definition for Watchmen. He said, you know, it's like an onion. That every time
Mm,
you read it, you get more layers and layers and layers. And that's something really amazing about the language, as you said, the language of comics, because you don't know when the reader is going to come back and say, I don't know, I want to read page 2 again, even 3 times. So you got to be ready, I guess, as a writer.
yeah,
So for the reader, maybe you can try to trick him into go back to page 2. But now, sorry, if the reader wants to go back to page 7, he's going to go back to page 7. So you got to be
yeah,
ready for it to maybe another layer, or maybe, you know, so it fits backwards and forwards, right? Because comics, you can read them backwards and forwards, and you got to make it work in both senses, right?
yeah, for sure. And then most readers probably won't go back to page 2 and look at that panel, like,
Yeah.
so it has to work without that, you know.
Yes.
And that's I think with mind management, that was where that was the most I've done. And like to me, Watchmen has always been that's the thing I've been trying to beat my whole life, right? And you're never going to beat it. But
Mhm.
um as far as like structure and like density of everything. But with mind management, that was my attempt at it. I was like, there's so much in there that I was like, I could go back and write like a essay with like all the weird stuff that's in there that nobody's noticed still
Mhm.
to this day. I haven't heard anybody. And but I don't want to do that. But I do. Most of the feedback I get is like, oh, I feel dumb, or I feel like I'm missing something. I was like, oh, I don't want people to feel that,
Mhm.
but I do want that sense of paranoia, like, oh, there's something
That's right.
there,
Yes,
you
yes,
know.
yes, yes.
And it's because it's not about intelligence, or you're not dumb. You know how to read comics, but it's like, but there's games I like to play, and it's like and I feel this way too. I'm a lazy reader sometimes. Sometimes I'm like, it's been a long day. I just want to read it. Like, give me a story, or like it's why you watch sitcoms or TV. It's like I just want to kind of turn my brain off for a little bit. And so I get that, you know, but Mind Management is not that book. It's definitely a book where you, like, if I was reading it as a fan, I'd be like, oh my God, this is so much work. I have to be, I got to be in the mood for it, right?
Mhm.
It's like one of my other favorite books is From Hell, And what makes From Hell great.
I was going to mention that exactly.
I'm just jumping. I can see your notes down there. No, but what I love about, but you got to be in the mood for that, because it's like but it's great. You can read it a couple different ways. You can read it just straight through Jack the Ripper story. But that's not the best way. The best way for me was like page at a time. Go look at the footnotes in the back.
Yes.
Go through boom, 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 boom like this. Yeah. But that's not a book you read after a long day at work, right?
Nope.
Like it's not. Nope. That's a book you're like, oh, I'm going to spend all Saturday. I'm going to immerse myself, and it's just a different kind of book.
I do that I do that with From Hell, and also with Promethea. You know, I need to be in the mood to read this, especially as you go forward and forward. You know, and it gets crazy is not the word, but you know what I mean. It gets more and more into that, and you're like, okay, I need, give me a coffee. I need a coffee. Sit down, relax. Nobody around. I just need to focus on this.
No, there's another book I reread over the summer was Stray Bullets, which I'd read as it was coming out like in issues, you know, and I'd read a couple of the trades. I have all the trades, but I've only reread the first few. But it's almost a different experience. Where that one, I read it over like a weekend. Well, it probably took me like 5 days, where I was like, I'm just reading this. But it was so big, and there's so many overlapping characters that don't, and he doesn't spell it out for you, so you don't know. And it's jumping in time. Like that one, I feel like I had to read as quickly as possible, so I could keep it all in my head and be like, okay, who's this? Where is that from? What is that? And it was such a big piece of work, but I feel like I had to read it fast, so I could keep it all in my head, because I would just forget if I took a day off. It was too long and I'd forgotten something. So anyway.
Nico Rodriguez asks, any tips for indie comics creators to increase your audience? Thoughts on digital platforms like Gumroad? Thank you.
Yeah, Gumroad. I think those. I don't know. I'm not an expert enough to know that stuff. Like I got in the old school way, so it's like I just went try to find a publisher and started getting my books out. And then, I mean, this is the beginning of internet. That's when I was starting. So yeah, there's so many outlets now, and so many ways to get your work out. Like the best advice to me is like make the comics. Like if you do good comics and you just keep making pages of it, it doesn't matter where you put them up or how you do it. Eventually you're going to build an audience. You know, I think just keeping your output consistent, you know, wherever it is. Like if you're posting on Mondays and Wednesdays, always post on Mondays and Wednesdays, put it up there so people are expecting it. It'll be there for them. But I think that there's no substitute for doing the work, you know, and it's like the format may change and the outlets may change, but doing the work doesn't change. You know, getting pages under your belt, that never changes.
To that question, I always answer the same thing, which is something that C.B. Cebulski told me many years ago when he was still talent manager at Marvel. It's like editors love people who finish things.
Yeah.
That's it. Just do the work, and then they'll find you one way or the other, right?
Yeah. No, it's the rule of whatever, 1,000 pages. You do it. You got to do 1,000 pages before you do your first good one, or write however many pages before you do your first good one. And there's a truth to it, you know. It just takes practice.
Yeah. One last, just you know, we've been at this for more than 1 hour and 30 minutes, and I guess you gotta go back to your life and to work and to have lunch. So
sure.
What? Sorry.
Oh, no, go ahead.
No, sorry. So one more, and I let you go. It's
okay.
Is there any stories that you've been stopping yourself from telling, you know, as a creator, and I mean creator own, that you've been saying, not yet, but that you know you're going to tell before you retire or die? And I don't think you're going to retire. So is there anything that you've been stopping that, but you know it'll come? That story that your magna opus in a way?
Yeah, I'm not saving it, but there's a book I've been working on for years called Sleepy Hollow, which is based on the small town I grew up in, and it's like stories of like everybody in that town, and then like me growing up, sort of like based on me. So it's going to be fictionalized. It's not going to be 100% true, but it's the one that I want to be. Like it's not going to. I don't need to do it now. Like the older I get, the more I think the better it'll be. And so I've sort of outlined it, and I have like, but I am kind of saving that one. Usually I don't do that, but it's the one where I'm like, I did a couple of different covers for it, and I'm testing out different art styles to try to figure out like what I want it to look like, because there's a few different ways I can do it. But yeah, it's probably my most personal thing. It's the thing that just is like whatever. I've never done anything like truly like autobiographical, because my life is not interesting enough to actually base it on me. But the town I grew up in was interesting enough, and there was a murder that happened when I was growing up there that was always sort of like burned into my brain, and so that's sort of like the seed, and everything is like growing around it, and but it's based on a true story, and I went back there and did some research, and I'm just taking my time with it because I want it to be, I don't know, I think it'll be good, but it's going to take me a while.
So you're saving it consciously, unconsciously, or you are like, not yet, simply?
Yeah, no, part of it is a schedule. Like if I actually sat down, like, oh, this month I'm going to just sit down and like finish the outline and start, right? I could do it, but I've just been so busy. Like Bad Ideas got me busy with a bunch of new books, and then Tyler, and then there's the pressure, like I want to keep working with Tyler and David, and Wilfredo's going to come back. We're going to do more bangs. So it's like I have all these like fun toys and friends to sort of work on things with. So it's constantly sort of distracting me from that other book, which is like, it's going to be a lot of work. It's really big. so it might be, I'm not lazy. It's just like, these other things are more fun.
No, and that book, as you said, needs more time, right? It just needs time.
Yeah.
You need the time to focus, and you don't have the time right now.
Yeah, no, not at all.
Anyway, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Matt, for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
And to all of you, thank you so much for your questions and your comments. You're being amazing as usual. And wear your mask. Be decent. There's the light by the end of the tunnel, but we are not there yet. So please, I beg you, be careful. Take care of each other. Take care of others. We are not there yet. And back on Wednesday with Aroa Travé and Bea Tormo, Spanish creators. You're going to love it. El miércoles con Bea Tormo y Aroa Travé. Os lo pasaréis muy bien. And we're off in 3, 2,